Hi, friends. Good afternoon, good day, good evening, wherever you are, whatever it is that you are doing. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for coming on to spend a little time with me. I'm reading. I'm reading this Best Books Library Journal, December 2025 edition. Best Books of 2025. Best Books 2025. So I'm going to read the editorial for you, just in case you didn't get a chance to read this. You may have seen it in your local library. Maybe this is a magazine that you are familiar with. This was my first time seeing this. Picked it up in the library branch that I visited a few days ago. So there's an editorial right here, and it's entitled Got Books. And the editorial director is Hallie Rich. And she says, earlier this year, that's in 2025, earlier this year, David Brooks wrote an editorial in the New York Times lamenting what he describes as the diminished role of literature in American life. There used to be a sense, inherited from the Romantic era, he writes, that novelists and artists served as consciences of the nation, as sages and prophets who could stand apart and tell us who we are. This is no longer the case, according to Brooks, because of contemporary writers' failure to resist social pressure, a lack of courage in writing, he says. I wholeheartedly disagree with this assessment of why contemporary literary fiction is less central to American culture. And this is the author, the editorial directors. She's the I wholeheartedly disagree with his assessment of why contemporary literary fiction is less central to American culture. And in parentheses, she says, Ann Patchett posted a pitch perfect rebuke to Brooks' piece on Instagram that I highly encourage readers to watch. But it's hard to argue against data that fewer people are reading books. A new study from University College London and the University of Florida, published in iScience, found that the share of Americans who reported reading for pleasure fell from 16% in 2023. I'm sorry, fell to 16% in 2023, a 40% drop over a 20-year period. With this dismal news, I was heartened to discover an optimistic report and uniquely portable magic why book publishing has hope from Bain and Company. Despite finding that only about 5% of media consumers' time is spent with books and audiobooks, the report concludes that publishing has the conditions to thrive. Based on Bain's research, books command the highest sustained attention among all media types. People may scroll on their phones while bringing the latest, I'm sorry, People may scroll on their phones while binging the latest streaming series, but their attention is focused exclusively when reading books. What's more, around 60% of US consumers express a strong desire to read more. And I think that's interesting because this study in iScience was on the share of Americans who reported reading for pleasure. And I think there are a lot more people now who read who will tell you that they don't read for pleasure, they read for information because the self help genre, I think, is what drives like a lot of online publishing, like a lot of the ebooks that are available. When people tell you, buy my ebook, it is quite often not a novel or short story collection or poetry. It is not reading for pleasure. A lot of it is reading for information. There are a lot of YouTubers that I follow who, you watch their videos enough, they'll tell you buy my ebook because their ebook is how they sell their method that they have come up with, the method that they are um, lauding and exploring and explaining in their YouTube content is more fully laid out in their book. So there is room for publishing those books. There are a lot of people who read those books who probably will never pick up a novel. So I find that to be quite interesting because I don't think that the commentary and the data are necessarily talking about the same thing. Just one of my little nods to my history in learning and studying statistics from another lifetime ago. So, how might we harness the passion of book talk fandom into offline activity that enhances individual and community well being? We could define the reading equivalent of walking 10,000 steps per day and help readers build the behavior. Ah, so these are ways to elevate reading, to draw people into the art and the act of reading, reading for pleasure, but just generally reading. So, a couple of reading things that I thought about today. So, I was talking to my friends about the 75 hard challenge, which I'm sure you're familiar with. It is this idea that for 75 days you commit to a regimen that you're going to follow almost religiously, that you're going to follow kind of obsessively, where you're going to do this thing every day for 75 days. And there are a few habits that you track and make sure that you are doing them every single day. And if you miss a day, an activity, you have to start over. And the goal is to complete 75 days of doing this regimen, and it will help you attain some goals that you would have set for yourself at the beginning. So, general, the 75 hard challenge is about weight loss or muscle fitness training and so on, because there is a big part of the 75 hard challenge is an exercise component, because you must do two 45-minute workouts every day, one of which must be outside, and you must follow a diet, and exercise and calorie focus and restriction are going to help you with your physical fitness for sure. But there's also a component of the 75 hard challenge which says that you must be reading nonfiction every day for a certain number of days. I'm sorry, for a certain amount of time every day for you to be successful with this habit. And I was just thinking about it, that, yeah, people who are doing the 75 hard challenge and reading a certain number of pages or reading for a certain number of minutes of reading nonfiction every day for 75 days, that's sometimes more than people who read for pleasure. Because if I'm just reading for pleasure, if I don't have time today to read, then it's not a big deal. I could read tomorrow. But if you're doing the 75 hard challenge and you don't read every day, then you fail that day and you have to start over from the beginning. So imagine that someone who is doing the 75 hard challenge may potentially read more than someone who's reading for pleasure. And so I just thought about all of that when I was reading this editorial, because charting the number of people who read for pleasure doesn't, not that it's not accurate, but it doesn't totally encompass all the reading that people are doing. So, there are a lot of people who will tell you they read for information, they read for art, they read articles for discussion, like teachers and students who will read, articles, but they're not necessarily pursuing reading as entertainment and just for the joy of reading, which I don't have a problem with people who do that. I don't have a problem. My goal is that you read. I was talking to my daughter. My daughter will tell you that the thing that I love most is books. And I said, yes, the thing I love most may be books, but I love people more than books. So we were having this conversation yesterday in the car where I would pick her up from school. And she said, um, she said exactly that. You love, she was talking about the things that she loves and the things that mommy loves. And she said books. And I was like, yeah, but I love you more than books, because I will always choose you over a book. And she's like, okay, fine. And I said, yes, I love people more than I love things. And she said, okay, but still, the thing that you love most is books. So I'm trying to get my daughter to love books, always to love people more than books, but to develop the joy of reading, to read for pleasure, but also to read for fun. Because I think that when you're reading for fun and you're pursuing reading as when reading is your thing, like reading is my thing, it's easy for you to acquire information because you're so used to reading for entertainment. So, my coastal little library is here. Hi, good afternoon, friend. I was just talking about this magazine that I picked up in my local library yesterday. You may be familiar with the Library Journal magazine. So, I'm looking at this edition from December, and it had an editorial. So, it's the best books of 2025 edition, and it had an editorial by Hallie Rich, and she was talking about the change in reading habits and tracking changes in reading habits. And she mentioned a couple of celebrities, authors. Both of these people that she mentions are authors. David Brooks, who is a New York Times columnist, and he has a book that came out recently as well, and it's somewhere over there. Just can't see the title from here, but he wrote about he wrote about the change in how literature represents our society. And he was saying that authors, novelists, and artists used to serve as, and I'm quoting, the novelists and artists served as consciences of the nation, as sages and prophets who could stand apart and tell us who we are. And this is no longer the case because contemporary writers fail to resist societal pressure. So, because of the society, writers, novelists are no longer really talking about issues um, as they used to. Maybe because of cancel culture, maybe because they fear no longer being able to be the voice, be the oracle. So I found that to be an interesting commentary coming from a noted author, a writer. But Anne Patchett, famous novelist, celebrity novelist, and bookstore owner, rebuked his opinion, and I'm gonna have to look up that Instagram post. But she argued against his statements, and yeah, I've read some Anne Patchett books, and I love her writing, but I don't know. So yeah, I think it's interesting too. I picked up the magazine because it said best books. I was in the library. The book that I went to pick up from the whole shelf had not come in. So I was grasping, looking for something else to come home with, because when I go to the library, I'm leaving with something. I'm leaving. It's that line from the Denzel's line from some movie. I'm leaving here with something. So I found this article, and I found it interesting. So yeah, the I'm looking through the magazine. So I was talking about something else from the article also, which is that they were charting um, Americans who read for pleasure. Yeah. Yeah, my cousin in the library says it's impossible to go to the library and leave with nothing. Yeah. I couldn't walk out without anything. I had to check something out. So I didn't really have time to scour the shelves like I usually do. Um, and because I was in a new library branch, I'm not, as familiar with their setup. It's a branch that was going to close for renovations. And so, according to the librarian, they had started culling their shelves. And I guess they weren't or still aren't receiving a lot of new releases because they haven't been ordering things to come to their local branch because they were thinking that they were going to be closed for some time. And the renovations have been postponed because other libraries in the area have also been closed temporarily. And so it would just be, it would be a huge loss, a huge dearth in the community if two of the public library branches were closed, because people would have to travel even further for books and community event space and so on. And if this article and this statistic that was posted in iScience is to be believed or to be taken the way it is being shared here, which is that the number of Americans, the share of Americans who report reading for pleasure fell to 16% in 2023, which is a 40% drop over a 20-year period. 40% less people are reading for pleasure. And according to me, not backed by any statistic, I think it's because a lot of people who read are not just reading for pleasure; they're reading for information. So I think that would probably be why a lot of the people who report reading for any reason don't say that they read for pleasure. But that's just me. I have no statistics. I have no data to back up that claim. But yeah, if only 16% of Americans now are reading for pleasure, imagine what happens when you take away the free resources. So I was glad to hear that the local library, even though they need renovations, they're not closing for renovations anytime soon. So I just got offered a copy of this book. So I'm going to see what it's about. So I'm just perusing the I'm just perusing this magazine to see what I can see. And here are some picks of the year. This is editor picks of 2025. Some of the best books of 2025. That's interesting. There are 6 books pictured here, and I haven't read any of them. So I read an R.F. Kuang book in 2025, but I didn't read Catabasis. Um, I didn't read Catabasis. So in Lessons in Magic and Disaster by Charlie Jane Anders was on that book. New England PhD candidate and witch Jamie is researching an academic mystery for her thesis while navigating grief over the death of one of her moms. Um, okay, I haven't read that. Catabasis is about the quest. Um, Magic. Department of Analytic Magic grad students descend into hell to rescue their professor after he's accidentally killed. Then there is The Bewitching by Sylvia Moreno Garcia, entwines 3 narratives of women across the 20th century. 1998, Minerva researches author Beatrice Tremblay for her dissertation. Beatrice's 1934 journal features entries about her missing roommate, and in 1908, Minerva's Nana, Alba, has dangerous encounters with the supernatural. I haven't read any of those. I actually haven't read anything from Sylvia Moreno Garcia. I don't think so. This is not really um, it's not really my preferred genre. My cozy little library says I have one more big exam I'm preparing for. Yay, for school. I'll finish this semester. Oh, I'm so excited. Then I will hopefully be able to read more. Yes, but you know, my my opinion is that you are reading a lot now for school, and your reading will probably transform. But reading for pleasure is only one reason that we read. I have been trying to encourage my daughter as much as she enjoys reading for pleasure with me, that it's just as important to read for education, to read for information, to read for curiosity. You don't necessarily know that something will be pleasure um, unless you're reading the same type of thing. Then you may be comfortable at predicting whether or not it will be pleasurable. But just reading for curiosity, I think, is probably just as significant as anything else. So yeah, um, my cozy little library says it will probably take it in a few weeks. I'm so excited. Please keep us posted on how you do. We are rooting for you. We're rooting for you. All right, so Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones, The Everlasting by Alex Harrow, and Marie Lou's Red City are all on that page. I haven't read any of those. So those are, it's just one genre. Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice is mentioned in this magazine because what would a literary magazine be if it didn't mention Pride and Prejudice? And there's a quote from Pride and Prejudice where Jane Austen writes, "I shall be miserable if I have not an excellent library." That sounds like me. Yeah. So this is the 250th birthday, Jane Austen, this year. Is it this year or last year? I'm just looking to see what's in here. If there are any books in here that I want to read that haven't read yet, that I can maybe get a recommendation. Black Girls Gardening. I'm gonna request this. Emmy is here. Hi, Emmy. Black Girl Gardening, because I'm black and I'm proud and I like to garden. So I'm going to request that. I started a spreadsheet on my computer to track the book recommendations that I get and whether or not I request the books from the library. Because sometimes when I request the books from the library and they come in, it takes a while before I get them. And by the time that happens, I don't remember who recommended the book to me or why I requested it so that I can talk to that person about it. So I'm now going to track, because before I would take screenshots. Like if you sent me a message or left me a comment on my YouTube video and told me a book that you were reading, and I said, well, that sounds interesting. Let me see if I can get my hands on a copy. And then it takes a few weeks for me to get a copy from the library. I might have forgotten. Who it was who told me about the book. So I started a spreadsheet. So hopefully I'll be a little bit better at keeping track of my recommendations. So I'm definitely going to tab this and I'm going to come back to it and I'll tell you about it. So let's see what it says. If there's any information here. Mindful gardens created with legacy and intent are showcased and modeled in Black Girls Gardening, subtitled Empowering Stories and Garden Wisdom for Healing and Flourishing in Nature. It profiles 31 gardeners and their spaces. Okay. I will check that out. I don't have any books. I don't have any book packages to unbox today. Emmy Clips, I know you love the unboxings. I don't have a book today, but I did just get my notification about some of the books that are going to be coming my way next month. So I think we will have books to unbox at some other time, just not today. I like this format. It looks like the classified ads in the back of a newspaper. And right in the middle are all these book pictures. So it's telling you some of the books that were published in 2025, the publication name, the ISBN number, how many pages, the list price. So author's name, title, publisher, publication month, page number, ISBN, and list price. And it orders them in their genres. This is so cool. I've never seen this magazine before. It is called the Library Journal. So if you're familiar, I picked this up at the library a couple of days ago. I went there on Tuesday. So I'm just flipping through to see what I could see. I'm going to return it tomorrow because it's only a 7-day loan. Now I'm going back to front because that's how I used to read magazines. I used to really love magazines. I used to subscribe to a lot of magazines. I'm definitely going to check out this book as well. I could be enticed to pick up a book by the cover, by the title. And this one is entitled Bookish. The author's name is Lucy Mangan. Bookish, How Reading Shapes Our Lives. I want to read that. Right here. That's it. There it is. Right there. Let's see what Library Journal says about it. Fine arts. A compass on the navigable sea. 100 years of world literature. Okay. Okay, here is what the magazine says about Bookish. Mangan, who's known for her title, Are We Having Fun Yet? Blends literary criticism with a rich coming of age story told entirely through the books that shaped her journey from childhood into adulthood. She revisits the wide range of novels, literary classics, sprawling historical epics, genre fiction that carried her through pivotal life stages, including first love, motherhood, and grief. She reflects on how reading itself changes as people age, from the comfort of rereading childhood favorites to the thrill of amassing ever growing piles of books. I'm in that phase. Mangan's work is warm, funny, and self aware, and makes reading feel like a universal gift, reminding her audience how books not only comfort them through difficult times, but also connects them with others. Her portraits of bookshops, libraries, and home bookshelves will resonate with anyone who has ever felt most at home surrounded by stories. Verdict: this is a book for anyone who has ever described themselves as bookish. It will appeal widely to lifelong readers, spark nostalgia and recognition, and provide rich material for book groups and discussions about the role of literature in shaping lives. So that is bookish. I'm going to check that one out. So I need to make note of these books that I want. Okay. And then here is a book about the Queen of the Nile, Cleopatra. I have a copy. I just haven't gotten to it yet. This is by Sarah El Arifi. I was gifted a copy by the publishers. And yeah, Valentine Books. This came out last month. El Arifi branches out from her science fiction fantasy titles to focus on Cleopatra, beginning with Cleopatra's earliest, most trusted relationship with her servant, friend, and lover, Charmian. As Cleopatra navigates multiple betrayals by her siblings, especially by her sister, it is Charmian who remains steadfast. Cleopatra tells her story from the future, reflecting on her choices, relationships, and political moves, all juxtaposed against the context of history's selective facts and patriarchal misjudgment of her life. Okay. It says more, but I don't want to read more because you know me. I don't like to read too much about a book before I read it. So, this is nice. This is nice. I've never seen this before. I've never seen this before. Wow. Okay. Amazon Business is advertising in Library Journal. Amazon now covers your library needs. Okay. You learn something every day. So, this was my attempt to look at some books from last year. Oh, aside from that, we are going to do a little reading because we are getting to the end of the month and I haven't finished my reading for the month. So I just finished my book that I was reading for the BookTube Prize, and I just got notified. That the book number 6 that I have been waiting for to come in at my library, I just got notified that it is there to pick up. I'm so excited. So when I go to pick up my daughter from school, I will stop at the library and I'll get my book. And so I'll have tomorrow and the weekend to read and have my ballot in on Monday. I'm so happy. Because if it didn't come in today, I was going to have to go to the bookstore tomorrow to get a copy. And the list price of the book is $30. And I don't want to buy a brand new hardcover for a book that I'm not sure that I'm going to love. You know, so I'm just very happy that I'll have an opportunity to check it out at the library for free. So Emmy Clip says, out of context, I was wondering on Monday, I think you said that you would check the show out. If you didn't, that's okay. No, Emmy, I didn't get a chance to watch the Amazing Digital Circus yet. It's been a busy week. It's been a really busy week. I had an activity yesterday with my daughter. We did a lot of traveling. And so I had just a lot of my regular spare time was consumed with the planning and execution of that. So I didn't get a chance to watch it yet, but I will. I will. I have it in mind. I have it in mind. I will watch it. Hopefully, I'll get a chance to watch it this evening and I'll be able to tell you about it tomorrow. I'm planning to be on here tomorrow. So we're going to do a little reading sprint because it's just past 2 o'clock. Yeah, 2:04. So 2:05, we're going to start at 2:05 and we will read for 25 minutes. So we'll read from 2:04 to 2:30. Is that okay? Let me know if you're reading, what you're going to be reading. If you're going to be reading, what you're going to be reading. I hope you'll be reading something. If you're not reading and you're doing something else, that's okay. You can let me know about that too. I am going to pick this back up because I want to make some progress on it. And I haven't been reading it aside from reading it with you. So it's good that we come on here and spend a little time reading because otherwise I'd be reading other things. I'd be reading other things or doing other things. I just finished reading the book that I had been reading for some time and it took a lot longer to read than I was expecting. I was kind of expecting that I was going to kind of speed read it and I didn't. So it took a little longer to read than I was expecting. But now I'm back to read this. So Emmy says she's not going to read. That's okay. That's okay. My cozy little library is studying, and Emmy is not going to read because she read earlier. And that's okay because Emmy is on a different time zone. So it's later. So I'm going to read for 25 minutes. And I hope that if you're reading, if you're watching later, if you're not here live, but you're watching this later, welcome. Welcome from Karen in the past. Welcome to my friends in the future. And let me know in the comments what you're reading while this is going on. I love hearing about what you read if you watch this as a playback and if you read along with the reading sprints. So I'm setting a 25-minute timer and we read until 2:30. So I'll see you then. Happy reading. 25 minutes. Okay, come on back. So it is 2:30, 2:31. My 25-minute timer is about to go off. So I stopped it. So, if you were reading along with me, let me know what you were reading. I was reading pages from Jane Austen's Bookshelf by Rebecca Romney, and I've been learning some things. Right now, I am in the section or the chapter where we're exploring the life and authorship of Frances Burney, who is one of the authors who was very influential to Jane Austen. And as a matter of fact, it is from her book that the title Pride and Prejudice is said to have come. And alongside the title, also maybe some of the rhythm or pacing of the novel. Pride and Prejudice was Austen's first written work, but it was not her first published work. So when you read this book, or if you're familiar with Jane Austen's publishing history, then you may know that, of course. And the author goes into a little deep dive into Austen, but now she is going into a little discussion or exploration of one of these authors. So we're reading about Frances Burney, who is the author of Evelina and was the other book that Cecilia. Cecilia is her most famous novel, but Evelina was her debut. And it was just so interesting to read in this about the culture of reading, comparing it, of course, to what I was reading in this magazine earlier, where more people are now, or I'm sorry, less people, according to the study, less people are now reading for fun. But I think that is because a lot of the people who are reading for other things other than simply fun or entertainment, or unwilling to say that in a study. Um, in in this time, so we're reading about Jane Austen's contemporaries. Austen herself, Frances Burney, they were living in the 1700s, early 1800s, and at the time it was quite frowned upon to read novels, and even less even less praise given to authors of novels. So Frances Burney's experience is very interesting because when she started writing, she was just a child, she was a teenager, very early teens, and she was compelled to write. According to this, she was pressed. She would sit up and write when the rest of her family was asleep, but she would write in secret because it was not something praiseworthy or considered to be praiseworthy. Her father, she came from a very accomplished family. Her father was her father. What was his job? Was he a minister? Because it says she worked as his, the word that they use is amanuensis, which I think means secretary. So she worked as his unofficial secretary. Yeah, my cozy little library says, so sad to have to hide her passions. Yeah, it is really interesting to think about, some of the things that we now take for granted, that were things that people really struggled to obtain and had to work hard to receive, in previous ages. So Frances Burney, her father was a published historian, and he had an extensive home library, but of his extensive home library, he owned one novel because it was more culturally appropriate, or more, um what's the word, it was, they didn't want novels, they didn't want to read novels. They thought that people who were too exposed to novels were, were going to be influenced in unfavorable ways. And not just novels or novel reading in general, but especially women reading novels. um, Here is, I wanted to read to you a statement. Um, okay, so the criticism of novel readers was that, or the critique of novel reading for women was that they thought it was dangerous for women to read novels, especially that portrayed male characters, because they thought it meant that women would, especially young women, would now have these, um, improbable or unfavorable ideas about the reality of men. So if I read books that portray male characters as romantic, then in my pursuit of relationships, I may now have this expectation of getting romance from a potential suitor, and either I will reject said suitor because he doesn't live up to my expectations that I got from novels, or, um yeah, I will reject these men because they're not, as they're not book boyfriend material. So, um novel reading was really frowned upon, especially for young women. And I love how, Rebecca Romney speaks about it. She says, um, what an awful shame that would be. Women refusing to settle because novels depicted men of higher standards. No wonder these commentators thought novels were so dangerous. They often encourage women to choose a marriage partner based upon mutual esteem and proof of his good conduct, rather than prioritizing a match of families and finance that more typically made upper class marriages in this era. So, yeah, it was frowned upon to read novels, let alone to write them. So, Frances Burney, when she started writing, she was really compelled. She was very passionate about it, and she wrote, but then she was scared for what it would mean if her writing was ever, like if it was found, people knew, especially, maybe, I don't know, especially, but maybe she felt like if her family knew that she was writing, that, word would get out and it would be a scandal. And she didn't want to do anything that would tarnish like her father's reputation or his standing in the community or society or whatever. And so when he was off on a trip, she gathered all her writing and burned it. So she burned her first manuscript, and it says her niece cried. But she was so connected to what she had written that she then went on to not rewrite, but to be motivated by the stories that she had written earlier to go on to write again. And so, because we're reading her story, we know that some of her writing does survive. And eventually, she does publish. She sends, her novel to be published anonymously. And, Rebecca Romney is telling us about the culture at that time, which was that there were a lot of novels that were published anonymously because of, the culture that was just described, that even though it was frowned upon to read the novels, people still read them, maybe, in secret. So there was a demand for novels. There was a demand for connection through reading, um, reading about real experiences or novelization of experiences, or maybe, for an escape, to see someone, a fictional character, live a life that you wish you could but can't because of your present circumstances. So there was always a demand for the novel, and so a demand for the books to be published, to be written. So yeah, like goes in the library says, book boyfriend material. Yeah. So um she eventually got her manuscript um, sold by co-opting one of her brothers to pretend to be the author and to make it known that the book would be anonymously published. And so she went on to publish more than one thing. So we know that she had a debut, and she has a more famous novel, which is not the debut. So I don't know how many works. I think at least three are credited. I think of Jane Austen's most influential books, two books by the same author on that list. So it's, very interesting to read about the experience of someone, or of people who wanted to do something so badly, that even though people, or the general idea was that it shouldn't be done, like, my purpose is such that I have to do it no matter what everyone else says, no matter if I can't take the um no matter if I can't, it's not praise so much, but I can't actually acknowledge that I have done it, but I have to do it. And I think that was Frances Burney's experience. So just beautiful, beautiful to read about, the experience of reading and the experience of writing and what it has meant over time. So definitely um treasured the opportunity to read that with you, because I'm loving the book. I'm trying to get a copy for myself. I'm trying to get a copy. Next time I go to the bookstore, this is going to be on my list. Sometimes I go to the bookstore, and I hadn't been going to bookstores a lot in the last few years, but recently I've started going back because I'm going back into the world. So the last few times I have been to the bookstore, I've just been so overwhelmed with all the books that I want to own, that I struggle with what should I buy. If I do have some money that I can buy a book or a couple of books, what would I take home with me? Like, and there's always the question, do you buy one new release that's a higher price, or do you buy lower price books, like backlist books that you've wanted for some time because they're on sale, or they're used books that are available? So I went to the Strand bookstore a few weeks ago, and I had sold a couple of my books. I had some book credit, some store credit, and they gave me the option to get the proceeds in cash, or get, I think it's 50% more if you take store credit. I was like, I'm only here to buy books. So of course, store credit. And I was contemplating, walking through the bookstore with my store credit in my pocket feels like it's burning a hole. Like, I know I could get books. What should I buy? Should I buy a brand new book that is higher priced? Or should I look for books that I have always wanted to read, or always wanted to own, that there may be older copies, or paperback editions that are lower priced? What should I look for? And so, what I'm going to do, next time I'm going to the bookstore, which hopefully will be soon, hopefully it will be soon. Um, I will arm myself with a list. These are the books I want to buy. I'm going to look for, and hopefully be able to acquire nice copies that I can take home with me. So I love hanging out with you guys. I'm going to have to run. It's time to go get my daughter from school. And it is such a beautiful day. The weather today is perfect. It's not even spring weather. It's like transitioning to summer feel. It is about 70 degrees outside today, which yesterday was 40s. So it's just these these jumps, these, and it's okay. It's fine. It's fine. I'm thinking about taking my daughter to the park after I pick her up from school. She might be tired because we had a really late night last night. So I'm going to play that one by ear. And hopefully we'll be back here tomorrow. At 12 o'clock, I usually join Dee Dee's live. Dee Dee is from Brown Girl Reading. She does a Friday Reads live on her YouTube channel at midday. So usually if I come on at 1:30, she'll be done by then. But before I go, I forget, I wanted to tell you. So just in case you weren't here when we were on Tuesday, I think it was, Patrice from 2 Minutes on Books was on, and she was sharing, well, I was sharing on her behalf because Patrice is hosting a Military May reading challenge in May. And so if you haven't already heard about Military May, I want you to think about participating because I think it's just such a great idea. Military May is focused on getting you reading books about about the military in your country, wars that have happened, and getting real life experience recounted by someone who has been involved in the military, in a war, or just working for the military in some capacity. So I'm going to share with you the 4 prompts for Military May, and you have some time to start thinking about it if you haven't already. The 4 challenges. First is to read a book about war or military in another country, not your own. So if you are watching this from outside of the United States, a book about war that is happening in a different country, not your own. If you are from outside of the United States, then definitely you could read a book that involves the military in the United States. But if you are living in the United States, the idea would be that you would choose a book that deals with military or war in another country that has no United States involvement in that war. So for Patrice's suggestion, she shared that she probably be reading a book about the Crimean War. So she recommends that as well. The second prompt is to read about a war that you are just curious about, a war that maybe you've heard about and know a little something but don't know too much about. Um, for me, maybe Vietnam War or Crimean War, the Korean War. There's so many military, there's so many, there's so many things that happen all over the world in different historical periods, and you may know something about and don't know everything about. And so this is an opportunity to read about a war that you're curious about or that you have limited knowledge of. That would be the second prompt. And then the third prompt is to read the memoir or biography of someone who is involved in the military in some capacity, a military officer, Navy, military, Army, Navy, Army, Coast Guard, Marines, if you're reading of American military, or a biography of someone who is in military in other parts of the world. And then the fourth prompt is to read a novel that's centered on the war. So any book that is set in World War One, World War Two, Vietnam War, a war, um, any of the wars, any of them, because it's not just World War One and Two, right? So novel, biography, or memoir, um, war that you're curious about, or military or war in another country aside from your own. Those are the 4 prompts of Military May. So some time to think about it so that you can figure out what you're going to be reading in May. You have a little over a month to start working on a TBR and acquiring the books. That's my plan anyway. So next week, hopefully sometime, I'm going to have Patrice here on the live, so we can maybe talk recommendations, more recommendations, and just generally make preparations for learning a little bit more about current events or historical events. And how they influence current events. So, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I have to wrap up, but I look forward to seeing you again. Hopefully, we'll be on here tomorrow afternoon, and I look forward to what we will do then. We always have a little bookish chat. we will try to have a reading sprint, and maybe there will be something new to unbox for you, Emmy. So Emmy says over here it's raining and it is windy and it's 5 degrees, 5 degrees, 5 degrees Celsius. Ta-ta-da. Okay, so 5 degrees Celsius is 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, so that was around what we had yesterday. Yesterday was about 40, 44. So just around 7. Yeah. So we have to go. I have to go. I have to go. I could stay here and chat with you guys all day, but I'll see you tomorrow. Hopefully, I would have some time to watch the amazing circus and be able to talk to you guys about it, including you, Emmy, tomorrow. So, whatever you're doing, whatever you are reading, I hope you enjoy it. And I'll see you around the same time tomorrow, same place. See you then. Enjoy the rest of your day, afternoon, night, wherever you are. Thank you so much for being here today. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.